The message didn't come from a government website. It didn't arrive through a press conference or a formal banking announcement. It appeared the way most things do now, quietly, through inboxes, private messages, and whispered conversations across the financial community. A simple question framed to provoke urgency and curiosity at the same time. Are you on the official RV alert list? It's free, they say. The dinar is heating up. Don't get left behind. Click below before it's too late. For many holders, this kind of language triggers a familiar mix of excitement and suspicion. Some have seen versions of this message for years. Others feel something different this time. Not certainty, but movement. Not promises, but signals. And those signals don't come from promotional emails. They come from the numbers.com. While inboxes light up with alerts and speculation, the real story is unfolding somewhere far less dramatic. In Baghdad and Erbil, local currency exchange shops are opening their shutters, setting their boards, and adjusting rates quietly, one digit at a time. There are no countdown clocks, no headlines declaring a reset, just a steady shift in exchange values that only those paying close attention will notice. On Saturday, as the local exchange markets closed at the start of the week, the US dollar slipped again against the Iraqi dinar. According to surveys conducted by Shafaq News, Baghdad's central exchange points at Al-Kaifa and Al-Harithiyah registered a rate of 143,150 dinars per $100. Earlier in the day, that number had been 143,400. It may look like a small move on paper, but in currency markets, direction matters as much as distance. Inside Baghdad's local exchange shops, the change was already reflected on the boards. Selling prices eased to 143,500 dinars per $100. Buying prices dropped to 142,500 in Erbil. The pattern was similar but slightly tighter. Selling prices stood at 142,350 per $100, while buying prices were recorded at 142,200. These are not numbers designed to excite retail investors. They are operational numbers used by traders, shop owners, and institutions that move currency as part of daily business. And that is exactly why they matter. Real currency movement rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up first in margins, spreads, and quiet adjustments made by people who cannot afford to be wrong. To understand why these small shifts are attracting attention, you have to step back from the alert messages and look at how currency pressure builds over time. Exchange rates do not jump randomly. They respond to liquidity, policy enforcement, cross-border flows, and confidence. When the dollar weakens locally against the dinar, even slightly, it suggests something important. Demand dynamics are changing. Either fewer dollars are flooding the market, or dinars are being absorbed more effectively, or enforcement mechanisms are tightening the flow. Often, it is a combination of all three. None of these factors require a public announcement. They operate through regulation, banking controls, and market behavior. For the average observer, this is where confusion sets in. On one screen, there are claims of VIP exchanges, private notifications, and exclusive access lists. On another, there are dry, unemotional numbers coming out of Baghdad and Erbil. The temptation is to connect the two immediately, to assume that falling dollar rates means something dramatic is about to happen. But currency markets rarely reward impatience. They reward preparation and understanding. The question is not whether the dinar is heating up in a sensational sense. The real question is whether the environment around the dinar is becoming more controlled, more regulated, and more predictable, and the numbers suggest that it is. When exchange shops lower their selling prices, they're responding to conditions they can see and measure. They are reacting to supply constraints, enforcement pressure, or shifts in customer demand. In recent months, Iraqi authorities have made it increasingly clear that dollar outflows, smuggling, and informal market manipulation are no longer being tolerated at previous levels. Compliance requirements have tightened. Banking channels are being monitored more closely. The result is not an overnight revaluation. but a gradual compression of the gap between official rates and street rates. That compression is one of the most important signals in any currency reform process. Even though it is rarely discussed in promotional messages, this is where the idea of alerts becomes both powerful and dangerous. People want to be notified at the exact moment something changes. They want a signal that tells them when to act. But real financial systems don't work on email alerts. They work on readiness. When the environment shifts, those who are prepared move smoothly. Those who are chasing notifications often find themselves reacting too late or falling into traps set by opportunists. The phrase official RV alert list sounds authoritative, but official institutions do not communicate through mailing list promising exclusive access. They communicate through policy changes, rate enforcement, and banking procedures. The real alerts are embedded in data, not slogans. Consider the timing of the reported rate changes. The dollar fell as exchanges closed at the start of the week. That detail matters. Market openings and closings often concentrate adjustments as traders reposition and clear balances. A consistent downward adjustment across Baghdad and Erbil suggests coordination, or at least alignment rather than isolated fluctuation. This kind of alignment is usually the result of policy pressure rather than speculation. It indicates that the market is responding to rules, not rumors. For dinar holders watching from outside Iraq, this can feel frustrating. The changes seem slow. The numbers move in small increments. There is no dramatic moment where everything suddenly becomes clear, but that is exactly how stable systems are built. Volatility attracts attention, but stability attracts institutions. Banks, regulators, and international partners care far more about consistency than excitement. A narrowing spread, a controlled rate movement, and predictable enforcement are prerequisites for any broader integration into global systems. This is why storytelling matters in financial analysis. Not the kind of story that promises instant wealth, but the kind that explains process. The story unfolding here is not about a sudden event. It is about a gradual tightening of controls, a steady reduction of arbitrage opportunities, and an effort to bring local market behavior closer to official frameworks. When you see the dollar slipping in local Iraqi markets, you are seeing the result of many invisible decisions made weeks or months earlier. You're seeing the outcome of enforcement actions, compliance checks, and liquidity management. The danger comes when people misinterpret these signals. A falling dollar rate does not mean that retail holders will suddenly gain access to special exchanges. It does not mean that private lists will unlock hidden opportunities. It means that the market is adjusting, and market adjustments reward those who understand the rules. If you are holding foreign currency, your advantage comes from documentation, compliance readiness, and patience, not from being first on a mailing list. This is where the emotional side of currency holding becomes important. Many people have been following the dinar story for years. They have seen cycles of excitement and disappointment. Each new data point is filtered through that history. When someone reads that the dollar has dropped in Baghdad and Erbil, it triggers hope, fear, and urgency all at once. That emotional cocktail is exactly what scammers and hyper merchants rely on. They insert themselves into the gap between data and understanding, offering certainty where none exists. But the numbers themselves are neutral. They do not promise anything. They simply describe reality at a specific moment in time. And reality, right now, suggests that Iraqi currency markets are being managed more tightly than in the past. That alone is significant. It does not tell us when or how broader access might occur. It tells us that the system is being shaped deliberately rather than left to chaos. If you imagine the currency market as a room full of doors, most people are staring at one door labeled revaluation, waiting for it to swing open dramatically. Meanwhile, the real work is happening behind the walls, reinforcing hinges, aligning frames, and making sure that when any door does open, it doesn't collapse the structure. The falling dollar rate is not the door opening. It is the. This is why preparation matters more than alerts. If public access or policy changes occur, banks will not ask whether you are on an email list. They will ask for proof of purchase, source of funds, identification, and compliance history. They will follow procedures designed to protect the system, not to reward enthusiasm. Those procedures are indifferent to stories and rumors. They respond only to documentation and verification. The situation in Baghdad and Erbil also highlights an important distinction. Local markets respond first. International observers react later. By the time a change becomes obvious to everyone, it has usually already been priced in. This is why relying on sensational messaging is risky. It positions you as a follower rather than a planner. The more grounded approach is to watch the data, understand the process, and prepare quietly. There is another layer to the story that often goes unmentioned. Local exchange shops operate on thin margins. They cannot afford prolonged mispricing. When they adjust rates downward, they are responding to pressure they cannot ignore. That pressure often comes from enforcement actions that reduce the availability of dollars outside approved channels. As informal supply dries up, the dinar strengthens locally, even without any change to the official rate. This process is slow, deliberate, and difficult to reverse once it gains momentum. This does not mean that every downward tick guarantees future gains. Currency markets are complex and influenced by many variables, including regional politics, oil revenues, and global dollar strength. But it does mean that the narrative of total stagnation no longer fits the data. Something is moving, and movement, even gradual, changes how serious observers assess risk and opportunity. So, when you see messages urging you not to get left behind, pause. Ask yourself what behind actually means. Behind whom? Behind what process? Real financial systems do not operate on exclusion lists for the public. They operate on rules that apply to everyone who meets the criteria. Your goal is not to be early. Your goal is to be ready. The most important update here is not the promotional language. It is the quiet shift in exchange rates across multiple cities. It is the consistency of those shifts. It is the absence of chaos. These are the signs professionals look for. Not fireworks, but order. As the story continues to unfold, the most valuable position you can hold is not certainty, but clarity. Understand what the numbers represent. Understand what they do not promise. Keep your focus on preparation rather than prediction. Markets reward those who respect process. For now, the dollar has slipped. The dinar has held ground. The exchanges have adjusted. And the system continues to move quietly, indifferent to alerts, lists, and slogans. The real question is not whether you clicked a button, it is whether you are prepared to navigate reality when it arrives.